You are live. Hello, 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 all my followers and amazing people who are watching today. I haven't been on in a while. It's been a long time. So I figured that I would come on and I would enlighten you guys with a big smile and positivity. As I always say, we have to start every day with something positive. So I hope whoever's watching, whoever will be here tonight, has a positive mindset and has found something to be grateful for today. So I always say that, we have very important things we need to speak about. And sometimes there's so many barriers and how we speak. And sometimes, people are not comfortable with talking about domestic violence, but I have made it my personal mission to do so always because I think it's really important that we talk about things that are going on in our community, especially things that others just are not comfortable with, topics that are touching. So tonight, I have a guest with me. Instead of just being me on screen, I also have someone who's very important in our community who actually, is fighting the good fight. We have tonight with us the executive director over at Concilio in Philadelphia, and they have services within their nonprofit that can help victims, as well as a lot of other good things for the community. And I thought it would be good to have him on tonight so that he can kind of enlighten us, kind of get into the conversation since he's a male about domestic violence and different things that maybe his opinions may be of the subject, and talk about some interesting and fun things that are going on with Concilio. So with no further ado, I have with me tonight Adonis Banegas, and he is joining me. Welcome, Adonis.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate you having me on.
How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing well, doing well, home as everybody else, and
Yeah.
getting ready to get over this quarantine, ready to
Yeah.
get back in the office.
You and me both. I'm hoping that second wave does not hit. I'm
I
tired of
know, I
staying
hear
at
you.
home.
But, the good thing is, it's another fashion statement. I got about 10 masks that I
There you go.
wear on a regular basis and probably support all my Phillies teams. So,
That's right. I actually went to Hector Serrano's restaurant today for lunch,
okay.
and they're selling Boricua masks. So they have
I
flags
saw
all
them. I was
over it.
there last week. I had
Yep,
to get my potato salad.
that's right. So I got like three masks. So that's added to my collection. So again, welcome for being on. You are on my Love Shouldn't Hurt page. So our talk is always surrounded around domestic violence and different things that affect our community. And what I wanted to talk about tonight, since we're on the topic of domestic violence, is kind of just what has happened in our community now and how the numbers have risen during this quarantine. And you're a male. I think it's exciting to kind of have a male's perspective on domestic violence because we're always hearing from women. Women are constantly telling us their stories and constantly telling us how they feel about domestic violence. But we don't hear from enough men. And kind of like their perspective. And I want to get into the different programs with Concilio and not just the victim services, but just all of
Sure.
yours because, this is a venue where people can learn about Concilio if they don't know about it. That's the benefit of doing these things because we can always collaborate and people can learn more about the different companies. So what I wanted to go over first, sort of, was just a few of the things that I've learned. So I'm in contact with a police officer who actually works for homicide with the Philadelphia Police Department. And in our conversations, he's told me that domestic violence numbers have risen, which is not surprising. People are home with their abusers. More than likely, they're taking advantage of this time and they're using this opportunity as a way to say, you know what, good, she's home, she can't go anywhere. Or he, vice versa. I try not to say just women because it's not just a female thing. But looking at statistics, it looks like there was a 30% rise around the world of domestic violence. And in total, 15 million more cases additionally this year have gone on in the past 3 months, which is scary and kind of just heart wrenching at the same time because in general, when you're in a home with domestic violence, and I speak from personal experience, when you're living through domestic violence, it's hard enough without quarantine. You're scared. You don't want to leave the house because you think they're going to come after you. But to know that you're on quarantine and you can't go anywhere during this time, and that person is with you, and there's nowhere for you to go because they tell you to stay in the house and you can't leave. So it's pretty scary because intimate partner violence, which is what most people call it, because it doesn't have to be your spouse. It doesn't have to be female and male. Could be female and female, male and male. The cases are just going up and going up. So as a male, you're gonna get all the info tonight since you're here. I'm gonna ask only you and me, so the spotlight's on you, kid.
That's fine.
So I want to hear from a male's perspective. You are in a relationship, you have a son, you have daughters. What are your opinions of domestic violence? I mean, I'm always interested to hear different males' opinions on domestic violence.
Yeah, definitely a big question and a big topic to discuss. I can kind of look at it twofold. First, professionally, I've had experience working in domestic violence programs, so very familiar with the whole intimate violent partner initiative, and really worked with people in Camden actually, that were dealing with domestic violence, and had the emergency cell phones that we would give out, and would have the support groups that women would come to, and just really lean on each other. I felt that once they identified with people similar to their issues, to the things they were going through, they were able to express more of the situations that they were going through. So having those support groups was something that was really big in our programming back there, and just a way that we can extend whatever services that we can. When you embed a domestic violence program in a nonprofit, it's a little bit easier for people to go to, because it doesn't just say come to this domestic violence
Right, right,
program,
right.
right? So it's a little bit more hidden, and it
Mhm.
gives women and people who are being abused in general the opportunity to go and receive resources. Taking that first step is probably the hardest thing that
Right.
anybody has to do, but once it is taken, there are many services out there that people can really take advantage of, and really just take the first step. And I know statistics will tell you it takes 3 and 4 and 10 times before somebody finally makes that decision.
Right.
And fortunately, some women or some abusees do take that step, but sometimes, we do hear those stories about it didn't go as well as they intended, and unfortunately they get murdered, and the children now become those victims because of that situation. And it's just always a difficult task. It's not an easy position to be in, and it's not a difficult. I mean, it's a very difficult job to have. So definitely a big shout out to all those people in that world, domestic violence counselors, everybody who does that work, just because it's so needed, and it's such a helpful thing to have, an outlet for people to have. But again, it's an unfortunate situation. So on a personal note, obviously, it's something that, luckily enough, I didn't have to deal with growing up. My parents broke up pretty young, but my father was not about that. I think his voice was enough to scare anybody, and that worked for me, and that worked, I guess, for the relationship that he had with my mom for the time being. But nothing at home. But obviously, I'm familiar with people who've gone through it. I've had friends who have had to escape their houses with nothing more than the clothes on their back
Right.
at that time, taking their kids out of the home, just to run away from scenarios like that. And it's something that we never want to see anybody have to deal with. I feel as though sometimes there's a lot of cultural connections to that too. Being Latino, and my parents are from Honduras, and just having aunts and uncles that, in that whole old school mentality, they feel as though the man is in charge, and may not be
Yeah.
a physical form of abuse, but definitely psychological, definitely monetary, that they have complete control of their household. And obviously that's something that goes on from generation to generation. So even having people who are my age and younger still feel as though that's acceptable. I mean, that's a learned behavior, and that's something that we need to address, and we need to make sure that we're constantly educating people on, because you learn it from your parents, you learn it from people that surround you. It's not something you're born with. And the change starts with just what you're doing, bringing awareness out to the community, bringing out outlets where people can share information. And if you don't know where to go, this is a great starting point, and I'm sure you point people in the right direction all the time. So just being a part of this is very fortunate for me, just to kind of share that. And I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the services that we offer, particularly with our Victims Witness Services program, where it's a little all-encompassing. It's basically a service that anybody who's been victimized of a crime can reach out to us, and get any type of resources, from court accompaniment to assistance completing victims' compensations applications, which is a city and state basically bucket of money that if you lost wages because you weren't able to go to work, or you have unpaid medical bills, or anything related to that particular crime that you were victimized of, there's a pot of money that you can ultimately apply for and get
That's
reimbursed
awesome.
for. And a lot of people don't know about it. And then when they do know about it, it's a very tedious process. It's a very lengthy application with 101 different forms that you need to fill out. So people just tend to they give up. And our staff fortunately works with people to fill those applications out and recoup money to the effect that last fiscal year we collected over $50,000 for individuals through this fund.
That's amazing.
And most of it was medical expenses that unfortunately go to debt collection, or they just remain as an unpaid bill. So it's a really good resource. And then the other big support that we have with this particular program is that we do victim relocation services. So basically, if somebody is being victimized of a crime in their neighborhood and they're being threatened, or they're being feeling unsafe in their location, we can assist in moving them to another location through these funds. A smaller portion of that money that we have available is something called emergency relief funds. So again, this is all related to somebody being victimized of a crime, but if somebody needs some type of emergency assistance, we can help with that. And the most common example I use, because it's actually the most common one we get, is there's a crossfire in your neighborhood, and there's a gunshot that went through your window. You don't have any money to replace your window. We can assist with doing that. Or if there's blood splatter on your steps and you can't get it out and clean it, we can pay for that service to clean it. Those are the most intense examples I use, but obviously it covers any type of medical supplies, any type of food coverage if needed for very emergency situations, kind of like a pair of last resorts. And all the individual really needs is to make sure that they have their police report, and then just work with one of our victim advocates to kind of go through the process. And this is an initiative that's citywide. So Concilio is just one of many agencies that does this work. And it's basically broken down by precincts. So we work with the 24th, 5th, and 6th precinct out of Philadelphia. So it's basically known Eastern North Philadelphia. So that's our connection to how we get referrals from people in need. And of course, anybody can just call us or check out our website to get connected for more information on that program.
Okay. So during this time of COVID, were these still services that, even though you guys were home, you were able to provide for folks?
Yes. So fortunately enough, we were able to continue all of our services remotely. We jumped on board pretty quickly. We were running out of the office with laptops, and those that didn't have laptops were taking their desktops home with them because we wanted to continue to work. And give a big shout out to my staff, amazing group of individuals who are committed to the work. And they just kept moving forward, checking in on their clients on a daily basis, phone calls, Zoom, Facebook, what else is out there? Tweets. Any way that we can get in touch with our people, that's what we were doing. Even if we were still doing the snail mail and sending out letters to people, we were staying in touch with them. And unfortunately, the courts were closed for a long time. So there was a lot of missed opportunities there, especially with people who are victims and they're also witnesses. So their court cases got pushed back, and fortunately there was a good amount of people who are still out in the streets because they haven't had their court hearing yet. That should be behind bars. So we're excited that the courts are going to be opening up again, and we can get back to making sure that people are getting their due justice if they did something, and that victims can feel safe. It's a hard thing to be victimized and still know that your attacker is somewhere out there, and that is aware that you're going to say something against them, and that's something that we see often. So again, that's where that relocation assistance really does come in handy.
Yeah, I think that's beneficial, and I hopefully people who will see this today and will continue to see it later on, make sure that they're listening to the information and just knowing that there's these types of services out there. I think a lot of what I found during this time, and unfortunately, I think the biggest downfall for COVID was that a lot of people were too afraid to go and get any help because they felt like, okay, if I go to get help, the courts are closed. How can I go, to the emergency, office downtown if the courts are closed? How am I going to get it? So then it deterred them from going. I know that during this time, a very large chunk of the money that was raised for Love Shouldn't Hurt went towards two families. there was one woman who needed just that relocation services, and they had no, place to go to during this time because COVID went on. Everywhere they went, they were turned away, and it was like a life or death thing. And it was like, you know what, we have the money, we're going to move you on, which is something that Love Shouldn't Hurt. That's what we stand for, and that's what we've tried to be since we started, working within the community and kind of just being that force so that people know, if you feel like you're being victimized, you feel like you can't be in the home with the person, we want to be an outlet that can help you move along. So thankfully, we were able to help two families relocate, and they're doing good. Where they are now, they haven't really had much contact with the abuser. We were able to help them just go through the process of changing their phone number, getting them all brand new email addresses, helping them figure out where they'll start school in September for their kids, and just staying with family that they haven't seen for a while, but kind of just putting those actions into motion. With the courts being closed, it was the most difficult thing. So I think that was something that was major for domestic violence, especially right now. Just knowing that the cases rose, I was so sad when I heard that, but it was like not a surprise because just in general, when the schools, I'm sorry, when the businesses are open and you're able to go to the courts and you're able to go to the police districts and you're able to just walk out and say, I'm going to go to the doctor's office right now. Those are things that women use. Well, I'm going to the doctor's office, and they really are going to a police station. Or I'm going to visit my mom, but they're really going to a police station. They don't have that during this time. During this time, it was like you have to stay home. You can't leave. You only can be an essential worker. So where do I go? I've had inboxes from several people, and you said something really important about the fact that, people leave 3, 4, 5, 6 times before they really leave. And I've had a lot of people who have reached out to me during this time and said, listen, I need help for a friend. She really wants to go. And then when I circle back around, it's like, well, I haven't heard from her. I think everything is okay. And they get discouraged, which is something that I try to always push to people. When you're trying to support someone who's dealing with domestic violence, do not be discouraged. We will say that we're leaving 10 times before we really do. And that has a lot to do with intimidation, with being scared, with not knowing where to go. And, like you said, you have all of these different resources, but because they had to fill out paperwork for this money, it made it harder for them. They gave up, which is something that deters them and turns them, and says that I'm not going to do it. Forget it, which is something that's really important. I sat on a roundtable discussion with Governor Casey last year. And one of the things that he asked, what could we do better as a community to help? What are things that you're looking for? And it's more he was saying more kind of like with police officers and just law enforcement in general. And I think mine was having a more open opinion to victims, when they come in a lot of times, and in myself, I've experienced it. Teresa just said the mental aspect is overwhelming. It's extremely overwhelming because you go into a police station and you're speaking to a police officer or someone in law enforcement, and their first thing is, well, I don't see any bruises. Did he leave any bruises? Did you take any pictures? And sometimes they might have hit me, but I didn't get the bruise yet, and I won't get it until the next day. But you're turned away because they don't see a bruise. So that was something that was major for me. But I think it's really important, even hearing it from someone like you who already is running a nonprofit, who has these types of services for folks, and just hearing from you that, they get discouraged and then they stop. So that's something that's truly important, that people know when they're watching this stream, that they share it, and they share this information always, because people get discouraged, but there are programs that can help. And that's something that
that's something that I would definitely push, whether it's Concilio or any one of the other amazing agencies that do this work. Going with somebody that knows the system, that knows how to navigate the right channels will be so much easier than to just going alone.
Right.
Because oftentimes, like you said, the police are overwhelmed, overworked, and if they don't see imminent danger, they're going to move along to something they feel is more pressing, right?
Right.
But if they go along with a victim advocate or somebody in that world, they know that this person is serious and that they're going to be more willing to listen, because everybody has a boss, right? Like how we say, and you have to follow that chain of command. So if that point person is not listening, that advocacy worker is real quick to say, well, let me talk to somebody in charge.
Right. Which is something major. I think that the importance of building Love Shouldn't Hurt those were fueling pieces for me. They were like driving forces for me, because when I dealt with it, this is back in 2003. and I dealt with it for 6 years, and I didn't have that. I didn't have the knowledge of it because, like you said, in our community, it's not something that, we deal with it because of the machismo with Latinos. There's so many men who feel like they have to have that power. But also within our community, what's really more prevalent is the fact that our people don't like talking about it. So you live in households where you grow up hearing about it, and your abuelas and your aunts are like, lo que pasa en la casa se queda en la casa. You don't talk about that. Your business is your business. So that was something that
because you don't want la gente to talk.
Yeah, exactly. Talk about your home, right?
Right.
So I wasn't aware of how these things work, and it took me several times to do it. I mean, how many times did I leave and I said, okay, I'm going to leave him today. I'm going to go and put a restraining order on him. I'm going to go and I'm going to get away from the situation. But then I get there, they ask me if I have bruises. I'm deterred and I leave and I don't go back. Then I go back to the same home. I'm abused 10 more times before I actually go back again. And then I get the same response and I leave and I go home, I get abused again, and then I go back again. So without having those advocates or people who can be around you, who can support you, you don't do it a lot of times, and unfortunately, like you said, people lose their lives. And, everyone who's followed me and everyone who's been there from the beginning knows that this initiative started and will continue to always be in the honor of Linda Rios, who was a friend who lost her life to domestic violence. And, she was my driving force because when she was killed, it was kind of a reminder to me that, no one knew she was going through it. No one knew she was being abused until she was killed. And I think that was important for me because no one knew what I was dealing with. No one knew what I was going through until I finally came out with my story and I did the documentary and I was able to share. Then it was like, you dealt with that? I never knew you lived with it. And it kind of was important for me because I felt like she lost her life because no one knew. Maybe if people knew, they could have helped her. There's so many programs, and I think that we don't utilize them as much as we should, like Women Against Abuse. They're a helpful resource that I've looked into, that I've sent lots of women, to, so that they can have resources.
Yeah, one of our former employees, former deputy director, Julie Avalos, is now executive director of the Domestic Abuse Project in Delaware County. Yeah. And they're doing amazing work out there, centered around domestic violence. And, it's just knowing where to go and really just taking advantage of the services that are out there. In the nonprofit world, we're constantly dealing with funding, right? And looking for grants. And it's one of those catch-22 things is like, we know the need is out there, but if we don't produce the numbers, then in their eyes, they're saying, well, obviously there's not a need because you're not expending all the funds, right? So while it's something that's available, people need to take advantage of the service so that they can put more money into the programs, because we need to show them, look, you're not giving us enough, so we need more so we can reach more people. So it's a catch-22. We need to make sure people are taking advantage of the service so that we can then show our funders like this is a needed service and we need to expand it.
Yeah, definitely. Teresa says, I think folks utilize the help, but the stigma is still there. Will he or she go back to the abuser? I think that is why people go back, because I think that people try to help and then they get discouraged. They feel like, okay, I'm going to help, but then is she going to go back? Is she going to go back to him? Yo no la voy a ayudar si ella va a ir para atrás. People don't realize how many times it takes a victim to kind of go into the situation and say, okay, I'm finally ready to leave, but then they go back. Women go back and forth, and if they have that stigma, they don't. Ellie says, I didn't know half of these services were available. That's the problem, and I think that's why it's so important for us to bring folks like you on who have services within Concilio, and bring different people in who have services within our communities, not just Philadelphia, but like you stated, now there's something in Delaware. There's places all over the country, but the fact of the matter is that people are not aware of them. They don't speak about it. And if you speak about it, it's like, we shouldn't talk about that. Waleska says, I agree. We have to be the voice of those who cannot speak. And that's a big reason why we do what we do. That's why people see me pop up on here all the time and have lives in the morning and lives in the evening. And they're like, esta está loca. But I think that it's helpful for people to see faces that they know, to see people within the community like yourself. You're well known, Adonis. And, for people to know there's support systems there. There's people that and even more so, I think it's important. And, we didn't talk about it much during, quarantine. I'm sad about that. A lot of my not speaking, I lost my grandmother. So it was a difficult time for me. But I think during COVID, it's something that we needed to, and I say need because we're still going through this pandemic, and who knows what's to come in the next few months of having to come back in quarantine again and things of that nature. But I think it's important for people because I've received so many inboxes and so many people who have looked to get help like this during this time. I knew that you had victim services at Concilio, but I didn't know to what degree. So this is helpful information for me because I've had people during this time that I've helped and sent to other places and things like that, needing financial support and needing the help. It's important for me to know that. So you're here today and that's helpful to me. And like I state, for everyone that's watching, always share these live, share our information because there may be people out there who don't know, who need the services, who need the help. Thank you, Teresa. It's just enlightening to just know that there's services like yours. So here's another question for you, off topic of Concilio and your services. As a father, you have 2 daughters, am I correct?
Yes.
2 daughters. So if this ever, and we can be honest, no one's following you. If you ever encountered this, what would be your, what would you do if you encountered this with your daughters? And I'm interested because I like to hear a men's point of view.
Sure. I mean, the gut reaction, right, is to say what every father will say is like, well, there's the shotgun and then there's the shovel. But the reality is that it starts way before that, right? It starts with educating your children about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, right? What's allowable and what's not allowable. Having the self-respect to know when to walk away from a situation, and even knowing what those triggers are before it escalates from a situation, right? So. Right. To use an example, of your daughter goes on a date and, the guy is charming and loving and he's everything that you want him to be, but he does a little something like stares at you or gets jealous because you looked over there and you thought he was looking at a guy. Those are triggers. Those are little things that you need to be aware of because they can grow and expand out of nothing. So it definitely starts before that whole dating scene even begins and walking through them. And for me as a father and as a male role model, setting the example. Nobody's perfect, obviously. Guys, make mistakes and arguments are had, but to what extent do you take them and what do you show them and what do you show in front of your kids? Because that's what they're going to take with them, and that's what they're going to think is acceptable or not acceptable. But if it does come to a situation where it goes that far, and I hope to God it never does. I mean, I will be there for my kids from day one and making sure that we go through the proper channels. Making sure that person gets what they deserve. And by that, I mean, going to jail and going through the court system and making sure that they don't do it to anybody else. But, my experience has been that people who hurt people are hurt people.
Yes.
So obviously there's a deeper underlying tone that individual has experienced. And, putting my social worker hat on, I would want to figure out what kind of led to those things, right? Because a good majority of people who are abusers were abused at some point in time. And that's something that, there's support and relief for that as well. A lot of people don't talk about the abuser side because it's, that's the bad guy. But the reality is that, they did a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad guy or a bad person, that they just need assistance and help. And there are programs out there for people who are dealing with that and they're battling with those things, and by no means am I diminishing the impact that they have with what they do out there, but again, they're hurt individuals just as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, from my own personal experience, I know that there was a lot of pain in his background and there was a lot of abuse in his background. And again, same thing. It's not to ignore what he did or to kind of diminish anything in any way. But I think now that time has passed, so many years have gone by, I can look back now and say there was a lot behind that. That probably triggered a lot of those behaviors that he has. And I think that Teresa said folks can change, it's a choice. And I agree. I think that I've seen for myself a lot of situations where men have gone through horrible situations in their past. They've taken it out on a relationship and then they've decided to make that change because they've gone into a new situation and they feel like, okay, I want to make this change. But, as a parent of a daughter as well, and personally someone who's dealt with it, I think that that's important, like you said, to start at home. And that's something that I try. My daughter is huge with my initiative. She wears my clothing. She wears anything that has love, shit, and hurt. She talks about it with her friends, and she constantly is at everything that I do. Thank you, Teresa. She comes with me sometimes to talk to victims. And I always warn people in advance that she's coming with me, only because my daughter is truly, truly just vested in what it is that I'm doing. And she thinks that it's something that it's important. And she knows that I take her because I want her to learn something, but she doesn't know that I'm making sure she sees so that it doesn't happen to her. And
Absolutely.
she's a very strong individual. She's such a great kid. And sometimes I tell her I'm worried about how she'll react because she's a tough one. She's a lot tougher than I am. So I want to go back to everything that we talked of, and I'll do that at the end because I'll just kind of like wrap up everything that we spoke of. But since I have you here, I wanted to promote your event that's coming up. I think that that's something that a lot of people will look forward to, especially since right now a lot of people are still on quarantine. Even though tanta gente se creen que it's over and COVID is gone, it's not. A lot of people are following the rules and they are staying home. And you have an awesome event coming up, and I wanted you to kind of have this platform, people watching to kind of hear of what's about to take place in a couple of weeks. So tell us about your upcoming event, Adonis.
Yeah, so thank you. So Concilio historically has been putting together cultural events for the Latino community for many years. And many people to this day still don't know that we're responsible for hosting the Philadelphia Puerto Rican Parade down by Penn's Landing. And this year would have been our 59th year of hosting it continuously. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we had to postpone that. And just the same, we've been responsible for hosting a Hispanic Fiesta down by Penn's Landing. This year would have been its 39th year, and it's just an amazing 2-day festival that brings together all Latino cultures through food, music, dance, and all the resources that are available throughout the layout of the great plaza. And pretty early on, we had to make a tough decision that this is something that just wouldn't be safe, bringing together 15, 16,000 people over the course of each day when this is still a pandemic. So we decided to postpone the event, and it just didn't sit well with me that we weren't going to put anything out there, knowing that we've been continuously putting together an event for our community. So through the work with some of our partners and sponsors, we were able to come up with this virtual version of Hispanic Fiesta so that we can give a little bit of the culture out there with music and dance and just letting people know that we're still here, and that even though we can't be together, just a little light entertainment, and also again another platform to share information about what we do in the community, and to again share a little bit of information about some of the stuff we've been dealing with. We'll have a little piece on the social and racial injustice that's been going on in this country. We'll also have a little piece about COVID-19 in there, but really keeping it light, having some local dance groups in there. So I saw Ray earlier on there. His group is going to be on there. Muévete.
My daughter.
That's right. She's going to be performing too, right?
Performing, yep.
So we'll have that, and it was important for us to keep some of that local energy alive. So that's why we had the dance groups coming, and we have some local dance music performance. One of my favorite groups, Siempre Salsa All Stars, will be performing. Love those guys. Always livening up a party. And then end it with Brenda K. Starr, one of our favorites. Somebody who crossed over. You could jam in English and in Spanish just the same, and we're excited to have her be a part of this and perform for us, and just give a little bit back to keeping it light, keeping it fresh, and letting people know that even though we're not together, we're still together virtually, and that next year, if everything goes back to normal, we're going to have a even bigger and better fiesta, and be able to enjoy it just a little bit more, because look how quickly we could lose something as simple as a concert, something as normal as going to a festival. It all went away this year in every aspect, and that just puts things in perspective on how you should enjoy the little things in life.
Definitely. Wow. So when is this fiesta? What's the time? Where can we watch it?
You can watch it on social media. We're streaming it. Gotta love technology. So we will be airing it July 11th, Saturday night, from 7 to 8:30. That would have been our traditional Saturday night headliner at Penn's Landing. So we wanted to keep that time frame still in there. It's going to be on our social media outlets through @Concilio Philly. So we're going to be streaming it through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we're encouraging all of our partners to also have watch parties so that they can share it, and people can chime in what they're watching, and we'll be out there responding to people. We have some contests and giveaways. We're even doing a submit your favorite Latino dish picture, and the favorite one is going to win a little prize, because there was food involved in the fiesta. How can you have a party and no food? So, we're encouraging people to have have their family at home watching it and eating their traditional food, and, maybe have a nice cold beer while you're at it, but something to keep it fun and, stay together, even though we can't be together like that.
That's awesome. I'm super excited for that. My daughter just joined in with that. She wasn't a part of it. And Ray called me and said, can your daughter come and perform with the rest of the group? And I'm like, yeah, she loves to perform. And that's one of the things that she's missed during this COVID time.
I'm sure.
Yes. So everyone that's watching, share the feed. I think we've shared some really important information today. Also, just remember to share the feed and follow El Concilio if you haven't on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Not only for what we spoke about today, but listen, another exciting virtual fiesta on July 11th from 7 to 8:30. You can do it. You can watch it through all social media channels. We'll be hosting a watch party. Look at all of our Facebook pages, Instagram. We'll make sure that you guys are very well published that day so that everybody can see you guys. We're excited.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
It will. Well, I'm going to keep on talking about the subject, but I don't want to keep you on and have you stuck here with me. But thank you so much. Thank you for sharing in the time with me, Adonis, and giving us the information for Concilio. That is another outlet that I will be sending people towards so that they can know that there are resources there as well. So thank you for sharing the evening with me. It was great to have you on, Adonis.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And we're looking forward to continuing our relationship with Love Shouldn't Hurt. We're excited to be working more closely together and looking for new opportunities to grow both of our initiatives. Thank you again.
No problem. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
So that was Adonis Banegas. Ooh, you can see my background. And he was talking for El Concilio. And this is just awesome. As Ellie said earlier in the feed, she said she wasn't sure that there was so many services out there. And I think that that's something that our community really, really just missed for a long time. They didn't know that we had so many services, so many things within the community that, can support our people. And I think that that was a big hindrance for everyone who kind of dealt with domestic violence, years ago, because we didn't know where we could get help from or what outlets we could use. And I think that now that we know that there's so many more services, it's a lot more helpful to our community and just folks out there who need help. So when we went into speaking about the fiesta, Eli Maldonado left a message and it said, how successful are these programs for men who have been abused? So I want to say this. We continue to always talk about women first, right? We always say, women have been abused, but it is just something that unfortunately men have dealt with as well. It's not just a female thing. It's something that women and men alike have dealt with, You just don't hear it as often. Men go through it and they don't talk about it. They don't go out there and just publicize on social media. I was beat up last night. Here are my bruises. It's not something that they talk about. So it is prevalent within men as well. I have seen when it comes to, if I look, I always have statistics because, you want to know what you're talking about when you talk. But when it comes to these types of services, about 30% of men will come and say that they have been abused, that they have gotten in these types of relationships and they have gotten hurt. And I think 20% out of that 30 will actually go through with it. 10% will go all the way through and 5% will actually see results from these cases. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the fear, just the embarrassment because they are men. I will tell you this much, working as closely as I have with men and women with Love Shouldn't Hurt, there are plenty of men who are being abused right now. But I will say for the men that I have dealt with, they begin but do not follow along, which is something that is disheartening as someone who's working in this field, because you want to be able to help everyone. You want to be able to help women and men alike, whether they're straight couples, they're gay couples, whether they're married or not married, whether it's just someone that they live with, maybe just a roommate, intimate partner violence is just something that we find in both sexes. So from what I've learned and from the folks that I have spoken to, out of all of these programs, I would say about maybe 5% go all the way through. Not because the programs are not working for them, but the programs will do for them exactly what they do for the women. I've sat with a man over the phone with one of these programs, and we literally did every single step that we do with women. This is what you need to do. This is your first step. Do you need to get out? Once you're out, this is where you can go. This is where you can call. But unfortunately, men have not seen it through. They start the process but do not finish, and that's sad for a lot of reasons. But I think that just like women, how we're scared, we're worried about people knowing that we're being abused. It's a bigger stigma for men because they're supposed to just inherently be the stronger person. They're not supposed to go through abuse. And how do I say that I'm being abused and I'm a male? So to answer your question, how do they work for men? Exactly the same way. The only difference between men and women going through this abuse is that men see it all the way. I mean, women most times see it all the way through, where men kind of fall back. So about 5% of men only see it all the way through, but they're dealt with as much as they are with women. If they need transitioning, they get the help. If they need to be taken out of a home, they get the help. If they need the funding, they get all of the same outlets as women. And unfortunately, they don't see it all the way through. Interesting. And what about programs for abusers as well? There are plenty of programs, and this is something that, thank you for asking these questions. This is something that I can start posting links to on my page so that people can see where abusers can go as well. There are plenty of anger management clinics. There are plenty of transition clinics for abusers as well. I went through just recently, glad you asked, during COVID, I went through a transition plan with a couple. The male was the abuser, the female was the victim, and they are beginning right now a program to work with the both of them. This is within Philadelphia, and I can do the research for you for other parts of Pennsylvania and anywhere else there may be help. But in Philadelphia, there is a program that will help abusers if they are looking through the help. It's like kind of like a 12-step program, and they help them from start to finish with working with anger management, with working with counseling if this is something that they feel they need because they feel like there's something from their past that kind of is triggering their emotions. It's also clinics that they have if they feel like it's something that's drug related, they're abusing because they're on drugs. So I can start posting those things on my page if that's something that people are interested in, because I think we focus a lot with Love Shouldn't Hurt on the victims. But if there are abusers out there, there are information that I most recently found for a case that I've worked on. Ellie says a coworker's son committed suicide due to emotional abuse. He was only 26 and they had a son. That's something that's out there. And we see so much in society, and people feel like we only have to deal with the victim, the person who's being abused. But the emotional abuse is also something that happens with our children. Our children see it, they feel it, and they feel desensitized to also, like, sometimes they're walking around kind of just in a coma state, and people don't know that they're also going through that. Unfortunately, I have seen kids who have dealt with this and have committed suicide, have hurt other people, have turned to slicing their wrists, fighting people at school, causing issues. So it is something that impacts the family as well as the victim. You're right, Teresa, we don't see it as often. And it was because of COVID that I found this out. There was the couple had an issue with just being abused altogether, the family, the son, the kids, everything. And from one day to the next. And that's why I agree with your former comment that said you can go past it. People can change if they choose to. This gentleman, and I can say wholeheartedly, wants to change. He wants to make that change. He realizes the hurt that he's put through with his family, and he definitely wants to make that change, which pushed me to find, support for him, because, too often we find support for the victims and we say, forget the abuser, they hurt you, they don't deserve it. But like Adonis said, there's so many people who are going through abuse, and then there's an outlaying factor. This is what happened to me in my past. My father abused my mother, and my grandfather abused my father. It's a cycle that doesn't stop, but there are people who want to stop that cycle. So it was important for me to research and find that information. So that is something that I'm going to look for so that I can post on the page. I will put the links to the page. If you know people who are in these situations and there are abusers who want the help, I will post the information because it is very important for them to know as well. Shirley says, are these topics addressed in middle schools and high schools? I think it's important to start talking about this at an early age. Yes, Shirley, that is something that Love Shouldn't Hurt. That is part of our initiative. And since I've started this mission, that is something that I do. I have gone out to high schools, I've gone out to middle schools, and we don't say domestic violence because sometimes children at a young age are not familiar with that terminology, but they are familiar of respecting themselves, loving themselves, knowing what's good or bad behavior. Because something that my partner in crime, Zulma, says often, all the time, bullying is a form of domestic violence when they're younger. Something that they don't realize they're giving off to other people. So they see, oh, I'm bullying, but they don't know where it's coming from. It starts really young. So we've gone into the schools, and what I always promote is positivity for oneself, self-respect, self-love. And we start that from as young as kindergarten. I've gone and I've talked to kids in the daycare, and just things of, you don't want anybody to push you, then you shouldn't push them, type of things. And then moving it up to middle school of self-respect. If your friend calls you stupid, you shouldn't call them stupid. Just starting really young so that they know. Like I stated earlier, my daughter is very well vested in my initiative. She knows positive behavior and negative behavior, and she's able to see that now. So that's something that's really important for us. Yes, Teresa says the household is going through it. Exactly. It's not just the victim that's going through it, because if you have children who are listening in the other room, they're going through that abuse as well. They also don't even need to hear the abuse. They can see when mom and dad is hurting. And that's something that I always say. When you're going through something that's emotional and that's painful, your kids can feel it. Just like they say when you're pregnant, oh, your baby can feel it in the womb. They can tell if you're hurting. When your children are living in a household and they see mom sad, they may not have heard that fight you had the day before with your abuser because that person is not home or they left, but they know when you're sad. They know when you're hurting. They know when you're depressed. They feel it. And it's something that reflects off of them because, like I say all the time, if mommy's not happy, they're not happy. Teresa, you're welcome. This is information that I try to just always put out there. I'm sorry, going through COVID and having people reach out to me and learning new resources is something that has been super beneficial to me. And I will share that information because it's important for all of us to be able to know where to get this information. Maybe if this information is communicated through this program, more abusers can stop this vicious cycle. Yes, and I think that my most recent case is a huge example for many people to know that there are help out there for people, not only for ourselves, but for people who have gone through this type of abuse and, you know, finally say, I want to make that change. I want to stop doing what I do. Because if they don't have people supporting them, they just feel like, I'm just going to keep doing what I do. You know, for a very long time, it was difficult for me to just forgive. And I think that that's the hardest thing for everybody. I think it's hard for all of us to just forgive, to say, you know, I see where you're coming from, or okay, I forgive you for doing what you do. And I said it in our video, and I say it all the time, that when I finally forgave that person, it kind of gave me what I needed to move forward with my life. And saying, I forgive you kind of takes away the burden from yourself, not just that person. Mike Vega says, very good. That's my daddy. Hi, Pop. You know, it's information that I think that all of us should put out there. How about college campuses? Yes. Unfortunately, we were supposed to go out to a college campus right before COVID hit. And then unfortunately, COVID hit and we had to cancel that speaking session. It is something that we are rescheduling, but it is something that we are looking into. I've gone to daycare centers. I've gone to middle schools and high schools. We have yet to sit on a college campus because that is when we were going to do it. But unfortunately, COVID hit. But that is something that we're working on. I think that our message is a message that's really important for a lot of people to share because, like I said, within our community, and when I say our community, I mean Hispanics, Blacks, just the minority. It's not something that we speak about. And I think that that's why this initiative is so important to me, because I lived through it and I was fearful because of the community that I'm a part of, because we do keep this to ourselves. So it's something that's really important to me and I'll continue to do. So college campuses are, you know, something that is in our radar and was on our radar. We were supposed to do a couple of speaking engagements that were canceled. We were supposed to also go to a all-day conference that was run by the Philadelphia Fire Department, where we would have had contact with lots of people. But because of coronavirus, a lot of those speaking engagements were canceled. Daisy Jimenez, you're awesome. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Daisy. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone who follows and supports this movement. It's really important to me that people are appreciative of what it is that we do. Can you do it virtually for college campuses? I agree we can. Right now, a lot of the schools are closed. They're having summer sessions, but they're run a little bit differently. I think once we get back into the regular normal swing of things of August and September, when the college campuses are back in session, whether it's physically or virtually, that is something that we can do. Now, thankfully, with different things like StreamYard and Zoom and things like that, we're able to virtually do these things. So that is something that we're looking into. Myself and others who work with me and Love Shouldn't Hurt have talked about this. I've been very open to kind of just doing things virtually. Excuse me. You see me here today on StreamYard. You see me live. I've been trying to find other ways to connect with people, other ways to be able to get the information out. COVID-19 was a very, very big eye opener for me. I received so many inboxes and so many requests for help during that time for people saying, can you help us? I'm home with my abuser. And I tried to get on live at the beginning of COVID, reminding folks that you can still go to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If we cannot return your messages or your phone calls immediately, the Domestic Violence Hotline is monitored 24 hours a day. Some people have said, I'm scared to make the call. He's in the home with me. They will chat with you as well, so you can text them. You don't need to definitely just go and call them in front of that person. You could text like it's a regular conversation. They will be there. There's agents 24 hours a day who are willing to help. You listen to Adonis, who said that they have something there who can help as well with their victim services program, and they work within the Philadelphia district. But Shirley, you're asking about Jersey. We will work with people anywhere in the state. The calls that I've received during COVID have come from Delaware. They've come from New York. I had a few in North Carolina. So we work with anyone within the 50 states. If you call us, if you reach out to us, we are here. Our website is www.loveshouldnothurt.com. If you go to our website, it'll connect you to our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter, our email address, our phone numbers. You're able to connect with us, link with us. If you send us a message within 24 hours, we can get back to you. We can reach out to anyone anywhere in the world to help. It doesn't have to just be Philadelphia. We're based in Philadelphia, but we try to just reach out to everyone within all 50 states, anyone who needs the help. It was really helpful for me to bring on Adonis today. He spoke about their victim services program over at Concilio, but there are so many different companies, nonprofits, and just different people around the US who can help. My mission now that we're doing more virtually is to bring on different people, panelists who work with domestic violence, who can come and just give us that needed information, because I think that, like Ellie said earlier on in the show, this is information that a lot of people didn't know and is super, super helpful for people to get out there. So I think that that's something that we'll continue to do, is just bring different people on and different outlets so that we can continue to spread that word. Teresa says, sadly, domestic violence went up 30% in households since COVID. Yes, Teresa, that's what we said at the beginning of the cast. And that's something that's really, really, really has been pressing on my heart, because I know that a lot of people are home with their abusers right now because COVID has not allowed them to go out. Thankfully, now we're lighting up a little bit, lessening on the stay-at-home orders. People are allowed to leave the home a little bit more frequently than before, which has been a blessing. I know that the courts were shut down, so getting a protection court order, at that time was difficult with the courts being closed, but they're open. So if you're watching the stream, please, please, please share the stream. Have people come to the site. Look, they're open. You can go to the courts, go to your local police districts. Continue to be your own advocate. I know that sometimes it is difficult. It is scary because you go to these places and they're like, where are your bruises? I don't see your bruises. Don't give up on yourselves. Sometimes you have to be your own advocate, and you have to fight for what you believe is right. I had to sit outside of a police district to have someone give a protection from abuse order. And that was so difficult to do. And so many police officers came out. And unfortunately, at that time, did not want to take the case, did not want to kind of deliver that. But then there were such caring police officers that helped me that day and said, you know what, stay right here. I'll be right back. We're going to go. We're going to deliver the protection from abuse order, and then we're going to come back and talk to you. They were a super, super help. There are people who care. There are people out there who want to help. Continue to be your best advocate, because exactly what Ellie said, bruises are not always visible. Mentally, emotionally, people can be out there abusing folks. I know so many people, unfortunately, who currently are living through domestic violence in their homes, and they say, well, he doesn't leave bruises on my eyes. He didn't break my jaw. He didn't break my arm. He didn't do anything that physically can be seen. It doesn't matter. If you have gone through a domestic violence situation and the person is calling your phone and leaving threatening messages on your phone, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to come after you, those are terroristic threats that can also be arrested for. So if you have those messages and you have other things that you are dealing with and you feel like no one would listen, they will listen. You have to fight for yourself, as Teresa said, because you are worth it. Love Shouldn't Hurt has been now over almost 2 years now. We're going on almost 2 years of just continuing to promote positivity, self-respect, and fighting for yourself. You have to fight for yourselves. And I continue to say this all the time. If you feel like you can't fight for yourself, inbox me and I will fight with you. I will go with you to get that protection from abuse order. I will go with you to make sure that you go through. You know, I had to be on the phone with someone for about maybe 40 minutes, I think it took that day, to make sure that she went through with it. She was terrified. She didn't want to do it. He kept calling her while she was there. And I kept saying, decline the call, decline the call. Listen to me. You can do this. You can do this. You're going to go in there. You're going to get the order. You're going to do this. You can do it. And I can't do this. I can't do it. And I stayed on the phone with her and she did it. And it is now 6 months after. She's doing so good. She cut him out totally. They went to court. She went through with it. So listen, if you're watching and you're living through domestic violence and you feel like I can't do it, you can do it. And if you feel like you can't, call me because I'll do it with you. I've lived through it and I have no problem holding your hand. Fred Salido, thank you so much for your dedication to this horrible act of violence against women. Maybe start sending information to the women in the Dominican Republic who suffer from abuse on a daily basis. You're welcome, Fred. I appreciate you being on. And that is really, really important. That is why I always say, please share these feeds. Please share our page. Please share our website, because we not only help people in Philadelphia, but we can help people through every walk of life, through all 50 states, all countries, wherever. Guide them through our website. If they're not comfortable with dealing with me because they don't know me, which is sometimes scary for some people meeting new people, they can call the hotline. They can reach out to Women Against Abuse. They can reach out to women in transition. They can reach out to different people who can help them. We heard today from Concilio, who has a program, Victim Services, who work within Philadelphia and helping people economically. Sometimes we don't leave because we have economic hardships. How am I going to maintain? How am I going to pay for that hospital bill if I leave him? How am I going to find an apartment? These are things that are major for victims who don't want to leave because they feel like they can't. So look into these services. Again, 1,000 times, I always say, reach out to me, go to our website, because if we can't help you directly, we will find a place for you to go. If we can't give you that information right there and then, we will give you the people who can do it for you. Edith Susie Pagan, empowerment is huge. Thank you for your transparency and sharing your story. Thank you. People always thank me and I appreciate it, and you're welcome for that. But I think that it's not really something that I ever looked for praise for. It's not anything, that I looked for just being famous for or just being super important. And I just think that it's something that we just continue to have to put out there, and it's scary for a lot of people and we needed to put a face. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who constantly follows, everyone who's on this live feed. I've seen people come in and out and I'm super, super appreciative. I think the more we spread the word, the more that we continue to empower other people, it can help. And Fred said, thank you so much for dealing with women and helping them. But I want men who are watching to know that if you are also going through this abuse, it is not just about women. Men go through this abuse as well, and we will help you get through that process. Shirley Santos, is there training opportunities for other women who want to be advocates like you? Yes, there are places like Concilio, there are places like Congreso, who actually, congreso.net, if you want to look that up, who actually have services. They have coaching, they have programs who will help people who want to be advocates, who want to be coaches for domestic violence. I also can put that on my page, and I will do that today. I'm writing notes while I'm sitting here to post different things like Congreso, Concilio, and just different people within our community who can help if you want to be advocates. Something that we're looking forward to. And like Adonis said, working together with Concilio is something that's been very important for me. Just, helping us be a fiscal sponsor. It also opens doors for us to be able to help with victim services programs. And there may be other programs that we can start because we have this help from this other nonprofit. Something that we do want to look forward to and we continue to talk about. Because of COVID, a lot of that stopped, but we still are looking into doing conferences with Mommy and Me. As I had stated prior, we wanted to do a huge conference, but because of COVID, all of that had to kind of cease and desist. But that is something we're looking into. With those conferences, we will have coaching sessions for people as well. We will have people who have worked in the domestic violence field for more than me, more than 15, 20 years, who are going to be there, who have kind of like drop-in sessions where you can learn just different things about being able to see signs, red flags, things that are important for folks to know. When I was on Bomba Live, one of the questions that Mia Mendez asked me were, what have you seen? What have been so important to you? And what do you think are red flags? And I think we're about to wrap it up, but I think what's something that's really important, especially with our younger generation, is knowing red flags. I think that's part of our problem a lot of times, that we, you know, get into these situations and we are not knowing what the red flags are. You know, some kids can say, oh, I'm not in a domestic violence relationship, or, you know, he's just joking. But I think it's important for us to know. And that's why I always talk about knowing self-respect within our kids and teaching them really young. Red flags are super important to note. If you're with someone and they don't allow you to go to certain places because they don't think that they want you there, or you have friends and they don't want you with certain friends, or they're worried about what you're wearing when you leave the house and change that, I don't like what you're wearing, or don't call that person anymore because you should be calling me, your time should be focused on me, or, you know, little things like looking at your text messages and keeping track of the phone calls that you make. You know, financially, there's a lot of with finances, and people don't realize that. Men and women trying to control, you know, your money, and, you know, I'll take your paycheck, I'll give you money. You know, those were some of the things I dealt with. I'll deal with it. I'll deal with your money and your cash flow, and you get what I say that I give to you. There's so many different forms of domestic violence, and it is not all physical abuse, people. Emotional abuse, mental abuse, financial abuse are all major things that we all should keep an eye out for. And red flags are important to know from the beginning. Ellie says, being an RN over 30 years and a clinical instructor, as an RN, we nurses are not aware about the red flags in the services. Would you consider nursing school programs? That's something that we definitely can look into. I spoke with Adonis before COVID and before my Love Gala, and we spoke about a partnership and kind of trying to figure out if we can come together to get more programs within our cities and within our communities. And that is really super interesting, actually, because my sister's a nurse and I have other family members that are nurses. And I think that sometimes that's something that we all lack, knowing what red flags are. And that would be super beneficial, because I think a lot of times women come into hospitals and they're being abused, but they don't want to say that they're being abused. So they go in and they say, oh, well, this happened or that happened, or I fell, you know, and it's important for, you know, the medical professionals who are there to know this could be a red flag. She could be abused. Should I call this person? Because it's helpful to know too, where in your community you can find those people. You can find, if you have someone who comes into the hospital who was beaten really badly, but refuses to say how she was beaten, or gives an excuse, or I fell. It's really important to see, you know what, I think she was abused. I think this is what really happened. And having those programs within your communities, whether it's in Lancaster, Philadelphia, Delaware, wherever, that you can kind of turn them to quietly, like, okay, you don't want to talk about it, that's fine, I'll pass on this information just in case you might want it later on. So red flags are important, and I think it's important as well for people to kind of go through these coaching programs, and these are things that should be offered by the community, so that people who are not aware, because there's also family members who have no idea, who just don't know what to do, you know, and they don't know the red flags. So they don't know when you say that you fell that something really has happened, or they don't know that, you know, they're at your house and they're texting and their friend, you know, sees your text message while you're looking over, and you say, oh, he's just jealous. You know, it's important for everyone to know red flags. And I teach my daughter really young, and I tell her all the time, if a guy says this to you or a girl says this to you, because like I said, it's not just the woman thing. It's important for you to know what's abuse, what's proper behavior, what's proper for someone to talk to you in a certain way. How should someone talk to you so that you know that you're being respected or disrespected? So I think that that's actually super important. You see me with my pen, because every time I hear something or I see something, I'm writing it down. You know, these are programs that I think are important, and are things that we don't have that we can start adapting within the communities, because it's important for people to know red flags. And especially in the medical field, when you guys are seeing people all the time, we have community nursing clinicals that we can maybe incorporate this. That would be awesome. And I would love to talk to you about that, especially since I've gone through a few coaching programs for domestic violence. It definitely would be something that I would love to do, kind of do as a partnership. You know, I know that you do clinicals and I don't work for your company, but it might be something that you guys may want to have incorporated in kind of one of those sessions, just coming out and having people who have worked in the field and are more familiar with it come out and teach, you guys within that field, what are the signs that you can look for when you're working with those types of folks. So that's super important. So hopefully people that are watching have learned a lot. I have. I always write notes. So I want you to see that I have notes. I always write down notes because I always learn from other people, and I love to learn more every day, especially with domestic violence, because, it is my initiative. It is something that I continue to fight with daily, with just helping individuals. So it's helpful for me to learn information. So I think it was really important today for folks. And if anybody is, looking for information and they're looking, for more info from different organizations, like I said, today we had Concilio. Their website is scrolling across the bottom. Visit elconcilio.net. You can also look at their Facebook page, their Instagram page, to find out information on their victim services program. You can also contact us at www.loveshouldnothurt.com. You can email us, text us. You can send us a message on our website. We will get back to you within 24 hours. Again, like we say over and over again, if we cannot give you the information at that moment, we will direct you to people who can. So I want to thank everyone for watching, and just remind folks who are still dealing with quarantine, because let's remember the pandemic has not gone away, folks. COVID is still out there. We still need to remain safe. So I hope everyone is wearing their masks whenever they go everywhere. If they have to stay home and they're not an essential worker, do so. If you are out with friends, just make sure that you're safe, because it is still out there. But during this time, for folks who are still staying home, there are still outlets like the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can go to the website. You can call their number. Their number is 1-800-799-7233. You can also text message them or chat. You don't need to call if you're worried about your abuser. Remember to visit Women Against Abuse, Women in Transition, and just remember to stay safe. If you feel like you're being abused, please, please, please reach out to these outlets. Reach out to myself or someone else you feel comfortable with. It is something that's super important for me. I want to say good night. I know that you have been on here and watching, and I've been talking for a while, but as always, I appreciate you. If you guys have been here and you have seen the entire show, thank you so much for just following along with me. You're welcome, Teresa. Ellie, thank you so much. Mwah, I love you guys so much. You know that I love you. So big abrazos. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. Mary, thank you so much. Thank you for just being here always. I appreciate you guys. Remember, love shouldn't hurt. If you don't feel like you're being respected, take that extra step and keep it pushing, because you are worth it. I'm worth it. We're all worth it. Everybody have a great night. God bless all of you. Stay safe. And you can catch me on the Found in Translation show at 8:30. We'll be talking about other exciting things. I hope you've had a good time. Remember that you can always have a good time when you come on, because I'm goofy, I'm silly, and that's just who I'm always going to be when I'm on here. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a good night.